T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome, friends. Welcome in. The Launch Sequence podcast is back for another week. We're talking space games. This time, one you are more familiar with. If you missed last week's episode, Jump Space is looking pretty good, and that was a solid talk with the devs. But this week, we're returning to Star Citizen with a little twist. No Man's Sky released a pretty big update this week, folks, and it is adding multi-ship, multi-crew gameplay. It's adding more multiplayer focus, custom ship building. It's like a big drop, and it kind of shakes up the space game industry. So we're gonna talk about that in the latter part of this episode. But this is gonna be kind of like a good little catch up on what's currently going on in Star Citizen, how it's affecting the game going forward, and of course, a look into some words that Chris Roberts has said, because you know, when Chris Roberts says words about Star Citizen, you should look at them, you should listen to them, but maybe you shouldn't trust them. And we're going to talk about whether or not you can, because Star Citizen release dates being thrown out there again, and that's disappointing. Well, not disappointing, it's just a little confusing.
Not
Anyways,
just a pinch of salt, and never enough salt to drive your blood pressure
a
through
whole
the roof.
train, dude. This is the sodium trade, the Silk Road. We're getting to the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, and we are offloading all of the goods. This one's hefty. So I'm joined here today by Tree0311. Thank you for joining me, man. Fellow YouTuber, podcaster, and roadmap watcher, noisemaker, I imagine. Do you stream ever? I mean, I know you do the podcast kind of live sometimes.
Oh yeah, the gameplay.
Yeah.
I think for every hour that I play Star Citizen, or probably every hour that I stream, I probably play 10 to 20 times as much, just because streaming is a bit of work, and it requires a bit of energy, and
Yes.
and sometimes I just want to play the game and relax. Got small kids, but I streamed a couple days ago Star Citizen. I've done 2 podcasts this week, just catching up on things because I was gone for a few weeks with the Army. And I'm probably going to play again tonight, continue with the Onyx facilities, because I've been having a lot of fun with those. But
yes.
It's just beholden to real life. It is what it is.
Yeah, I feel you, man. You've had a big year. I'm glad you've even gotten time to stick to the podcast and stuff. But we will have those down in the show notes for you guys if you want to check out his own content. Let's start off today. Well, actually, why don't you introduce yourself? It's been a cool minute. Tell the folks where you come from and kind of what you're into when it comes to Star Citizen. Why are you on this show to talk about such subjects?
I'm Trio311, and I am the host. I'm the producer and host of the Pathfinders podcast. It's just me now. It used to be me and Nazarus, but Nazarus's real life has taken turns, good things where he's just not able to make time for streaming and podcasting. So it is what it is. But yeah, the tagline for the Pathfinders is charting the way through all the nebulous information surrounding Star Citizen, Squadron 42, and their development. And so I do that, and I also stream gameplay when I have the time, just because I enjoy doing it. But I look at all the development stuff. I do deep dives into features and content and how they're developed, and I especially keep a close eye on tech-related things like server meshing, Star Sim, all that. So that's what I do. I'm always streaming for whenever I stream and do the podcast. It's all charity-driven. I keep no monetization for myself. It's a Stack Up shirt. So if you're interested in supporting Stack Up and learning more about them, check them out. It's a great cause, supporting veterans to the power of gaming. But yeah, I'm a former infantry marine and current Army National Guard flight paramedic. And between that and being a dad to 3 small children, that's why I'm so busy.
So very into the Star Citizen news cycle. You keep your ear to the pavement. You follow how things are going and what's being produced and what the expectations are that are being set. So tell me, were you thinking that Star Citizen was going to be releasing to 1.0 in as possibly early as 2027 in 2 years? Does that seem to line up with the stuff that they've said about the game being developed?
Well, and like you've gone over the release view and then the 1.0 column on your show, and I'm sure everybody here has checked it out. I've done the same thing. I just reviewed it again Yeah, because it is interesting. And there's a lot of good stuff on there, and there's a lot. That's part of the problem, though. There's a lot on there, and they talked about how delivering those things with a much higher degree of polish, and of bugs, more release, ready. And like when you look at, say 2028, 3 years from now, I think that's reasonable in order for getting tech and features in, to allow them to, be in the live environment for testing and bug fixing. But I think because if you look at all the tech and features that are on the release view for the 1.0, it's stuff that's in development. Other than I think the biggest wild card is the social stuff. Everything else is things that is already at least partly in the game, and they're building the next evolution for it. And we've seen it, at CitizenCon and stuff. So I think that those are achievable things, but not achievable in they are polished and ready for 1.0. Having all the tech and gameplay features released and polished for 1.0 in 3 years is a big ask.
Yeah.
But then we're talking, there's so much content. Like all the local stories that they talked about, you've got your local stories for each landing zone and such. There's so much PU driven content that they want to create. Are they going to do that at the same time and with the same level of polish when this is their first content driven year? And then, doing that alongside, they're going to pick up Squadron 42 episode 2, along, development on that. I don't expect them to be able to create all that content and deliver it to where they want it to be in that same time frame, alongside their feature goals. 2030. Yeah, I think that's probably reasonable. An additional 2 years of polish work, and additional development. But 3 years while they're still trying to polish Squadron and features that they wanted in last year are not even in tech preview yet. Nah.
I mean, even if you like 3 years is one thing, he could have just said 2028, but to say 2027 to 28.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
yeah.
just for reference and clarity and context, the quote we're talking about here was given to a solo journalist who wrote a single article that is in French and has been translated. So, like, there's a lot of opportunity that this has all been misconstrued throughout the translations, through the person who's listening to this interview and all that. But Tree, you did say that the French community reached out to the journalist and they confirmed it was a direct quote from Chris himself.
Yeah, well, there's a friend of mine who's in my Discord is in the Astropub Discord. I don't know if he's in yours as well, but he's a pretty prominent member of the French Star Citizen community. His name's Odysseus. He's the one that does, him, that does the roadmap thing.
Yeah, Ithaca.
Yep. And he told me, and he's a much more pessimistic person around Star Citizen's development than I am. I appreciate his points of view and how objective he often is regarding it. And he's like, to be fair, we reached out to the journalists themselves and verified. Wow, and I mean, again, that's secondhand, but it's like,
it helps. Something to know, yeah. So this is Chris Roberts basically saying that he believes
Chris Roberts and his leadership team, because he doesn't just pull this out of a hat. Like, there's other people that say, yeah, hey, we can do this.
It's just so easy to not say dates. I'm actually really proud of the idea that Squadron 42 has only had maybe like 3 or 4 public release dates that they've given out. People will be like, oh, it's been delayed every year since 2014, but they actually shut up about it after they missed their 2016 release date for the most part. And they waited until 2024 to give out a release date for 26. Now, we don't know if that's going to happen, but at least it feels like they realistically waited until the game was somewhat within reach and then gave like a window. They may or may not meet that. That's still a year away. But to say something about Star Citizen, which is so much more a variable, unpredictable project that like really doesn't even need to reach that 1.0 level to be an interesting game that they can market, is like I'm I'm flabber my gasts are flabbered, dude. Why?
Yeah, yeah, my yeah. What was the point of saying something like that? You don't need to like. It's not like Star Citizen is struggling this year in terms of engagement and finance. Like they're making money this year more than they've ever made. A lot of people are playing the game. There's a lot of engagement, and yeah, there's been lots of broken stuff. But you don't need to come out and say something like that to keep interest in the project going. Like it's I just don't see why that was necessary to come out and say that. And I think it was, it's one of those things where someone left Chris in the room all by himself, and he wasn't being monitored or filtered, and he just went off the script again.
They're trying to break into
No.
he locked himself in with the journalist, and the people were trying to break into the door. Stop!
Yeah,
Don't stop the interview!
Xylo took a bathroom break, and he couldn't get back into the room to tackle and smother Chris in time. And
Um, so the biggest thing that I think really, I actually think that the content angle is working great for them. If you look at like the Star
100%.
Citizen 1.0 panel, you see guilds and factions that they mentioned that are already coming into the game. You can see that like these small location based storylines are starting to come into the game, and they are staying in the game. They're not just events. Sorry to disappoint, but like they're doing okay in that part. I think what everybody is looking at is like the tech. That's the even oh my gosh, the whole pyro shield system, setting up this idea that there's PvP warfare in these systems, and that there will be like a dedicated subset of the community who is warring against each other week after week to win these points to protect their bases on these planets. Like that's not just adding features into the game. That is changing the culture of the player base and how they understand the game. To do that kind of thing, or even to purport to do that kind of thing in 2 years, alongside the economy getting figured out, Maelstrom working.
you haven't even started. It's just
Yeah,
pictures.
I do
Like
not understand that.
you look at all those other features, and it's like, okay, well, we're reading about those in the monthly report. They've demoed those things, but there's things on there that are, as of last year, were just ideas. And CIG doesn't have a great track record in taking things from idea to release, let alone 1.0 level release in a very short, I mean, essentially, like that's not a small thing. It's not a small feature. And I don't know how they think they can introduce that on top of the things that they have to develop to make it work. Like you have to get dynamic server meshing in the game and working for that to work. Like that all these things you have to have dynamic server meshing, and are you can only do so much work on them until the release of dynamic server meshing and StarSim and other contingent features.
All the rift
There's
factors.
yeah, we know better. They should know better.
Yeah.
Like did maybe you didn't release the other postmortems on some of these bigger ticket items to us, but they've done them. And why did they think that 3 years is such is so much time? And I think another thing is just the amount of personnel they have. Like they're at like 1,100 people now.
No,
But
I think it's
when
at
they,
something like 900 something in the
I'd have to.
when in
I need
the
to.
when Turbulent became CIG Montreal. I think they reported numbers, and it was less than a
Yeah,
thousand.
it was. I've seen 11. It was like and Jared talked about it. We're over 1,000 people. We're like 1,100 people or something like that. I don't know if they've continued to get more efficient, aka eliminate positions in order to consolidate and open those positions somewhere else. Like they're still hiring, but like they're not at where they wanted to be by 2026. If you did the math back in 2020 when they first announced the big expansions to Manchester and Frankfurt, they had a goal for 2023 and a goal for 2026, and they've essentially met their 2023 goal a year or so late. But they'd have to hire so many more in order to reach the amount of people and production capacity to get that 2026 goal. And
Yeah.
I don't know how they, because that's part of what they're part of it is how much they need to hire and get people trained up in order to produce the volumes of content that they want. And if you want to reach that goal, you need to increase your production capacity, because I don't think they're at that production capacity to meet that goal with 1,000, 1,100 people. I think that's why they estimated 16, essentially like 1,600 across the global studio back then, is like, this is how many people we need in order to generate what we want. And given what they've been capable of doing over the last couple of years and meeting their goals, I don't think that they can come anywhere close to 2028 with 1,000, 1,100 people.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much more development to do.
Yeah, it does feel like the expansion that they were hoping for, the clear rush of funding that they were wanting from Squadron 42 to help with that expansion has been delayed.
Yep.
So it could be that some of that stuff happens after Squadron comes out, but we have no idea how that launch is going to go. They might have to do more support on that game. Like you said, they might jump onto the sequel, which I think would be crazy. But in general, they're clearly not where they wanted to be a few years ago at this point. And we can tell that by the way that they're trying to fundraise this year, probably in anticipation of the work they need to be doing next year. But it definitely sounds like that sort of, that mindset, 27, 28, is based more on the projections that they used to have rather than the reality of where the game is right now. Because there's a big increase in development speed if they want to try and get everything that was listed in 1.0, not just into the game. That's the thing, is like, I could understand if he was saying like, oh, we want to, be at the point where this is a full experience by 27, 28. We want to be hitting beta testing, kind of quote unquote, by then. But
feature
to have
complete,
them,
but not content complete.
Yeah. But to have them be at a 1.0 stage where Rich is like, there will be no broken features here. There will be no wipes. There will be no like major feature changes other than what we're adding in two years minimum is, and that's not even 2 years minimum. Like it's 1.5 years minimum, right? This is 2027 starts in 10 months, 11 months right now. No, sorry. 16 months.
Yeah.
I was doing the wrong kind of math. So that's a 16-month window, or a 16-month period that the window opens, and then obviously they have 2 years after that. But like, that's a hefty expectation to set. Yeah,
I appreciate that they, because obviously we know that the people who are doing feature development, a significant amount, if not a majority of them, are polishing Squadron. And so obviously once they finish polishing the features in Squadron, they get back onto feature development in Star Citizen. But that's, okay, whenever that happens, that's, I don't think that's the windfall of feature development, and things just, get exponentially faster that they expect it to be. I don't think that's a realistic expectation. Will it pick up? Yeah, sure. But I don't think it'll pick up anywhere close to that much. And it's a lot of content. We can see they're making content right now, but they have to increase that amount of content to meet those goals. It has to be more polished, and I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell they don't pick up Squadron 42 Episode 2 and start working on that.
I don't know, man.
But that's just content. It's not feature development, because the features are done. Like there's might be a little bit, but that's why I don't think it's anywhere reasonable. It's not only is it a lot to get the features in and get them polished, but it's a lot to say, hey, we're going to make all this content, all this story content for all 5 systems, and also work on Squadron 42 Episode 2.
Yeah, see,
I'm like,
it takes a lot to justify a sequel to a single player game these days. I don't know if they're going to get to that point, release Squadron and be like, yeah, we should do another one of these, when they could be staring the moneymaker in the face that is Star Citizen at that point.
I don't know. It's Chris. You know, and it's a 3-part campaign. You know, you're going to get left on a cliffhanger at the end of episode 1, ready for episode 2. You know, I don't think it's going to take 2 to 3 years like they thought it was going to take 2 to 3 years, you know, however many years ago. I think it's going to be a longer pipeline, especially if they want to pivot to 1.0 development. You know, I think they'll pivot to 1.0 development, and Squadron 42 episode 2 will start to, you know, simmer on its way to boiling, you know, but I don't think, you know, they're going to be able to maintain that content pace across both projects to get, you know, it's
yeah, neither do
I. Yeah, it's like if they said, you know, 1.0 at 2028 and episode 2 at 2029, no, you're smoking. Add 2 years at least to both.
Yeah.
You know, and then we're maybe cooking with peanut oil.
Well, let me ask this: like, when did you, before this whole idea that the game might actually even possibly come out in 27 to 28, what were you thinking was the timeline to us seeing, say, the Terra system in game?
To seeing Terra, like, I was thinking 3 years, maybe, you know, 3 to 4 years to see Terra. I was thinking Nyx, you know, like, you know, say like from CitizenCon last year. I was thinking Nyx, you know, towards the end of this year, you know, first half of next year, and Castra within a calendar year of that, and then Terra a calendar year from that. You know, so that was looking at 2.5 to 3 years as of, you know, CitizenCon last year, which put it into 2027, you know, up to 2028. But again, that's, you know, that's getting the system in game with, I think, a lot of the sandbox content, but I don't like, you know, the story, the location stories, I think is going to be significant. You know, if you have a location story for every major landing zone, you know, and the Terra, it just the planet of Terra in the Terra system has 3 that we know of, potentially a 4th. Not to, and we're not including Gen, which is another major populated planet. And then, like, you know, people don't know that Terra has more than just Terra in it and has a lot going on. It's a big bustling system, and they want these location stories, you know, for essentially every major landing zone, significant location. You know, that's a lot. That's a lot. And so, you know, it's one thing for them to get the Planetech V5 and get the base system and the landing zones in. It's another thing to create story-based content with the bar that they've set, you know, with the everything at the locations and the polish and all the. I love the oh gosh, what I'm brain farting, but where the comms calls. I love those. I think that's great.
All
That's
the
a lot
mission
of
givers.
calls. Yeah, mission givers, you know, both in person and via comms calls. That's so much, you know, when you think about all of the locations.
Yeah, and you look at Stanton, and we've already got what, 2 location specific stories, 3 now. No, the ASD stuff is in Pyro, so we have the Hathor facilities and we have the ASD facilities in Stanton right now. Sure, there's going to be more. Sure, there's going to be more in Stanton, just because, like, it makes sense. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of businesses, a lot of things going on. But you extrapolate that kind of thing over to Stanton or to Terra, and you think, okay, it's taken them, what, a total of 6 months across both of these updates, 4.1 and 4.3, to get in these new locations and the stories associated with them and everything. They might speed up on that, but even the Hathor locations were using old assets and still taking the time. So, like, if they needed to do the same thing for Terra, once Terra came in, they'd probably want to test them with players before actually dropping them in so that they know it actually works. You're looking at least another half year to full year of just Terra gameplay to test up to 2, maybe 3 location specific stories, and we know there's going to be more than that in Terra. So like, what's the business? Terra's coming in next year,
Yep.
and you're going to test it for a few years, or are we going to see Terra drop in 2027, and then the game launches less than a year later? It's just like yeah.
I'd love to be surprised, but I don't think I'm gonna. You know, people have called me a white knight many times, just because I set my expectations objectively based off of what the CIG tells us. Because otherwise, like, there's no other evidence to compare to other than just, people like a lot of people would just use past performance without looking at anything else. And it's like, well, that's not including the whole picture. And so, I try to include past performance on top of what CIG tells us and
Yeah.
what they're actually working on and showing us. And I think that, there's no reason to be that wildly optimistic. It's important to set reasonable expectations, and I don't think 27, 28 is reasonable at all. I think, people say add 6 months for this and that. Well, I'm saying add 2 years for all of those things across
It's always
each
2 years.
one of the. Yeah, it's a safe bet.
Oh
The Price is
man.
Right rules. Come on, guys.
Yeah, it's always 2 years. That's the squadron rule. With Star Citizen, it's just soon. There is no number. Never put a number on Star Citizen. That's a losing strategy.
Just be happy with what you have and what's in the near future, and you'll be good.
Well, see, now that's the thing. I completely understand the people who are unhappy with the way the year has gone. I'm a person who was always features first. I didn't really cover ships that much. I mean, sometimes, but like ships weren't what brought me here. It wasn't the content that brought me here. It was like the cool tech and features, and that's been the crux of updates
Same.
since 3.0 up until 4.0. And so it is a drastic change to step into this new phase with Star Citizen where they're not trying to convince us with features and tech advancements and stuff anymore. Has that gotten to you this year?
Yeah, and everybody says Star Citizen is all about ships, and I'm like, no, it's not. If it was just the ships and you couldn't do anything with them, then the ships wouldn't be that interesting. Everybody has their favorite ship because there's a thing that they want to do with the ship. Yes, part of it is the aesthetic and stuff, but these ships are built around professions, and those professions are built around gameplay features. And so, and it's all enabled by very complex tech because of the level of fidelity and scale. And so, like, that's what I've always been interested in too. Is there's lots of games that have done it more simply, and I got bored with them, and so and I'm with you. That was what my content and what a lot of my passion for Star Citizen was about, was following the feature development, because I thought the features that they're developing were really cool and interesting.
Roadmap watchers.
Yeah, roadmap watchers, monthly report readers, dev comments in Spectrum. It's all the soup is how the soup is made. I find it fascinating, and yeah, I mean, I like the content. Obviously, I don't like the level of polish that has gone into some of the content. It's been a mixed bag. I think Onyx is great, but some of the other content, like the ASD stuff in Pyro, it's like you reused the Good Doctor. That the Good Doctor is how old? And so that's part of why I think the content stuff has a long ways to go, because locations are content, and if you're reusing that old of a location and just reskinning it for a big content thing, like that's not the level of effort I want to see.
I'm personally, dude, I'm like, please do the easiest stuff to get out some stuff in the meantime, because I want them to focus on the important stuff.
Yeah, it makes sense. It just wasn't enough of a variety change for it's one thing to reuse the puzzle pieces and put them together differently. I just like it was too obvious that it was very much reusing that map and adding some stuff to it.
Mhm.
It's not like with some of the other that like that's a feature is being able to oh gosh, what's the name of the thing that randomly is supposed to make procedurally generate the interiors of buildings and space stations? You've covered it. I've covered it.
Houdini,
I'm praying for it.
Mighty
Yeah, it's part of
Bridge.
well, it's Mighty Bridge. There we go. It's like how much did we hear about that? And we have copy paste of the same location over and over and over and over again across so many of them, um, without the variety. It would be one thing if um, the locations had more variety to them in their layouts and it felt more real. But I think it's kind of a hollow justification to be like, oh yeah, well these corporations in fiction would just be basically 3D printing this same copy paste location over and over again. I'm like,
Yeah, I feel you there. I'm
it's not a
definitely
McDonald's, it's a space station.
there is some point, I don't know when it is, but there is some point when I would definitely like to turn to CIG and be like, "Hey, remember all these different tech and tools that you've worked on throughout the years to do these things? Can you show us where they're doing those things?" Like I enjoy the open development style of sharing updates at different points of the workflow, and I appreciate having learned more about what these tools are and why they would be used. But the difference between this project and another is like in other games, you can't really appreciate all the hard work people have done and iterated on to get to the point where that game is in front of you and working the way that you see it. Like if a game
Mhm.
does all of the right things, you don't notice that it is. You just kind of play it and enjoy it. I want to know the hours and days and weeks and months and years of stuff that we've watched this stuff happen. I think this is the kind of project where they should be like, okay, now here is a breakdown of how these things affect and impact the locations that you guys are playing in. I mean, if anything, that's a victory lap, right? If you're the company that did all this stuff, you kind of want to sit there and be like, look at how all of our cool stuff is working together and making the game work. I would love to know that, but I do think that they would be hesitant to do that because that sort of a story results in mentioning a lot of thrown out work, a lot of things that didn't work that you
Yep.
had to turn and pivot towards other ways. And we know that CIG does that. We know they do that, but they hate talking about that.
Mhm. And with Starchitect, like Starchitect looks really cool. It's important in order to put all this content, location-based content onto planets and moons. Um, but if Starchitect doesn't, if we don't start getting more variety in these locations, even though there's, thousands of them, if you have thousands of locations, but they are, using the same assets in much the same way, it's not going to feel all that interesting and going to get real tired real fast. And that's what I worry is, oh, okay, it's this type of location. I've been to 5 of these in the last week. I know what it is. It's not, um, that there's not enough randomization and differentiation between them right now, and just making more, it isn't going to address that, at least to the extent I think it needs to.
Hmm. So, considering the focus of this year and everything, how have you felt it's been going so far? We're now seeing 4.3 going live. EPTU has been used once for a couple of things. Um, how do you feel compared to what your expectations were at the beginning of the year?
Um, I think if we're talking beginning of the year and we know that they're going to be content driven and stuff, I think for EPTU, they have not obviously met my expectations. I think we're probably 3 to 6 months behind on that. Surprise. Um, I do think that they're going to catch up. I think they're pushing hard to get that going and start using that. But it's definitely they're of course that's lagged behind. The content, I think it is overall, some of it's been like I like the Onyx facilities. I think Resource Drive, had it worked, would have been great, and I think obviously now that they're putting in a lot of fixes, it's a whole lot better. But it's hard to see it fall flat on its face like that and struggle for a month and change.
Yeah.
But I think it was a good idea. I think it was a good idea. It's just the initial execution has really struggled, but people still enjoy it. And the engagement has been huge. I mean, just look at how much SCU has been moved. Um, it's not, obviously people are doing it, but it's hard to say that that was good with the way that it launched with the playability factor. Because there was the game is more stable. And I know people are like, but there are bugs, and I'm like, that's not a stability thing. Is the game crashing? Are the servers crashing? That's stability. Playability is bugs, and so I don't think they are meeting their playability goal. I think that they're pretty far behind on that in a lot of ways. Even though they have fixed a ton of bugs, the ones that they haven't fixed are such big ticket in your face items. I think it overshadows the fact of that they've fixed as many bugs as they have. There's
It's the same
a
problem
content creator.
we've always had too. Is like the bugs are linked to features that they don't want to fix because they're just going to replace. Quantum travel is awful. It's so freaking stupid. But I'm sure they're not going in to fix it because they just have a model that they're already using inside the company. We're just using the leftovers at this point.
Yep. Yeah, it's issues, and it's but it's hard with those things that are very player facing. I think stability has been good. I think the fact that they've been working on the save and dev branch for as long as they have has done pretty well for stability. I think playability, I think if you're not doing the content of the month, the game is more playable. But if you're doing the content of the month, I think it's 50-50 at best. It's just a coin toss from month to month. And then the content is again a coin toss because it's affected by the playability. For me, the Onyx facilities have been exceedingly playable. I have had very few issues other than falling through a floor once. But otherwise, I think I'm up to like a dozen Onyx runs, missions, not to mention, delving really far just because I'm a compulsive looter. And everything seems to be working. I know people are reporting the excessive spawning. I haven't run into that yet. And speculation wise, I think the excessive spawning is a symptom of them making more NPCs in the facilities than they initially wanted because they don't have the AI turrets. And I think it's gotten away with itself a little bit in some cases. But I do think all in all, I think it's definitely better than most years. Just because in previous years, we've had so much in the way of stability issues and even more playability issues than we probably have this year. I think the playability issue is just, it appears bigger because it's so much of it is linked to the content of the month, and that hurts them.
Yeah. That's part of why I have this whole thing with calling things events that aren't events, because it keeps getting people to think that they have to do these things when they first come out, and you don't. I just ran Hathor with my org last week, and we ran through the whole thing, and it went swimmingly. We did get attacked by another crew later on. I think that was specifically because they realized we had like 20 plus people on the run. But I've gone there so many times just for looting with a group of 2, myself, maybe just 4. We never run into other people. The glitches don't really hit. We have a good time. We get good loot. We get out. And I think if you start playing Star Citizen like a normal game where you're just kind of trying to go and do what you want to do as opposed to doing whatever is exciting and new, it works better that way. The problem is like...
there's not an expiration date.
Yeah. It's just the game's been so empty that it's really, really easy to just beeline for whatever is the gameplay of that month, like you said. And that's a problem I think they're shedding this year. I think this is all part of that, is like, get enough of these locations around so that when somebody does join the game next February, they're not looking at whatever is being talked about that month. They're looking at the 4 different choices that they know now exist throughout the star system that they can go do. it seems like it's very straightforward and a no duh kind of moment for most people, but a lot of folks I think are missing that they're like trying to build out a game experience, and it's not just about what's happening right now. It's about what's going to be available in the future.
Yep, I agree because far too few people go back and try the content from the previous month or previous months afterwards and be like, oh, they fixed this. Oh, it's working better. Okay, sweet. And because like if you add that into the playability scale, it does, and that's why it's my playability I guess marker grade is probably better than a lot of people's because I've been so busy. I barely get to play things when they first come out. I'm usually weeks late compared to a lot of people who play chronically. Um, the Onyx facilities are one of the first things that I've gotten to play within like the first week, other than Resource Drive this and experience what everybody experiences in the given moment, other than watching other people, fall flat on their face.
Right.
And so I think that's part of the perspective is you need to look at this, retrospectively, and be like, oh, okay, yeah, at first it was rough. Surprise, CIG. But they always, keep pushing. They don't stop. We just don't always notice, after the fact, or we take it for granted.
Except for with Ghost Hollow. They need to fix that.
Ooh.
And Stormbreaker
Yep.
is still struggling. I think it's hit or
Mhm.
miss, but like it's not worth just only doing whatever is up front for that month for sure. Let's talk about the roadmap roundup from this last week. Kind of a little look ahead at what's coming up in Star Citizen. Starting with the locations you've been talking about, these Onyx facilities, they are talking now about adding the third wing, the science wing. What do you think that's going to bring for players that's different from the first two?
Um, and again, this is probably, I'm just speculating because obviously we don't have a lot to go on other than the story. And so I think there's a good chance to, because it's like the third part. I think in recent months they've talked about boss fights, um, and I think there's going to be an opportunity for a boss fight, whether it's a creature or like an NPC character. I don't know, um, but I think there's between the creature development and the talk about boss fights, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a boss fight in there. Um, and I we already have the radiation, and so again, this is speculation, but I think that they, with medical coming in this next month, or medical changes, I wouldn't be surprised if they introduce like we had the radiation poisoning, radiation area of effect thing. I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a toxic area of effect thing, um, besides just the radiation, some sort of poison, contamination thing, an additional thing that involves the changes to medical. We've got those new pens, um, and so that's what I would hope to see, sort of coincide with one another. um, and the other thing is those crafting stations, I think, are really cool and very handy because a lot of people don't run around with all the different attachments for their multi-tool.
Yeah.
And so that's super handy. They're not everywhere, and I hope that with this or the science area, that they can take that like a step further, where we have to bring things from within that wing to the crafting station. Because right now the crafting station just magics the tools out of thin air. You don't have to bring anything with you. You don't have to go pick up this in order to make it work. I hope that we have to, they can find a way for us to bring things to the crafting stations as part of this next episode. As you don't just do it in order to get a tool. You have to do it in order to progress the mission. You have to go find these things, bring them back, and get, craft this thing, or maybe it's part of the mission. You have to, maybe it's not a crafting station, but like some sort of science station. You have to grab these samples in order to craft the thing, in order to get the last piece of evidence that Arkin wants. Make it fit the sciency theme. So we'll see that. those are, I think, kind of lofty expectations, but that's kind of what I hope for, just based off of things that we've seen, randomly interjected into the monthly reports, and having it coincide with medical changes.
Right. Yeah. So the Apollo is also on the roadmap now, set to tentative, but basically it's confirmed, at least scheduled to be in 4.3.1, likely by the end of September. Anybody who's
Mhm.
watching this, actually, supporters, obviously, you guys are here live. You can watch this early. But if you are watching this after it is officially released, then it is September. So later this month, the Apollo should be coming out with 4.3.1. And that's kind of a big deal. That is an old concept. It's weird to
Yep.
call it an old concept because it still feels like a new ship, but I think they brought it out in 2018. And it's a very deep medical ship. Like it's the first ship that feels truly meant for the medical profession. It has medical beds, modules with different bed types. It is supposed to have drones that can retrieve people, but it sounds like that's probably on the way out. And it's generally just all around purpose is being a medical ship. It sounds like they're kind of possibly thinking about changing up medical gameplay. I don't think they're going to do it with the ship release, but it does. I do think from what Jared said, it sounds like we're going to get at least information on where it's going to go from here. Do you think we will actually see gameplay changes next month or this month, whatever?
Uh, Small. We saw the recharge station thing and the sneak peek,
Yeah.
and I forget. I apologize to whoever it is, but I saw a content creator who went in and reviewed like all the medical beds in the game in the different ships to show where the little recharge box things could slot in. And so there, some of the ships, their medical beds have them, some of them they don't. And so there's going to need to be some updates to make that work. And I think I think if anything, we're just going to see resource consumption in order for respawn, and people keep talking about it just for regen. And it's like, no, this is probably going to be for injuries too. Like if you want to go back to your Apollo and heal an injury, it's going to take up a portion of that card from that box. They're refilling it with the the Bioticore medical serum, because everybody calls it regen serum, and it's like, no, it's not regen serum. It's Bioticore serum that is used for the creation of, they can use it to create limbs and organs, but also 3D print an entire body, essentially. And so I think it's going to be for all of those things, but I don't think we're going to get healing gameplay other than push button. I'll be surprised if we do. I don't think we're going to get the sort of doctor gameplay. I don't think we're going to get anything in terms of crafting medical ingredients and stuff. I think that's the extent of what the change will be.
Do you think we will get some
and
kind of doctor style gameplay in medical at any point?
if they don't, all right. It's one of the things that's been promised. Like it, if you've never watched my content, there are about a handful of things that I am religiously vitriolic about, and one of the things is the importance of medical gameplay because of how much emphasis CIG has placed on it since the beginning. We just haven't had it because the game, it's a feature that hasn't been developed much. We've got first aid. We've if you think about it, remember when they did that ISC on engineering and like the roles within the engineering gameplay profession?
Yeah.
We're we're really meant to have that for medical as well, and they haven't like detailed it, but essentially like we need people to be combat medics, we need people to be doctors that do the healing, and we need probably people to do like some sort of pharmacist type gameplay where they make the stuff.
What I'm worried about is medical gameplay. So we saw, I think the first time this really happened was with cargo hauling, cargo gameplay in general. They physicalized everything. They did the cargo refactor, stuff that we knew it was going to happen and we were expecting, and a lot of people were excited about. But a lot of the player base reacted with like disgust. A lot of people really hate the idea that you have to move boxes around. Now, I don't think that's really going to affect most people. Most people aren't going to be going through this game moving boxes around a lot. Right now, obviously, when they draw emphasis to it and there's not much to do, you end up doing it more. But medical gameplay is going to be that, but like turned up, right? Because everybody needs to have medical opportunities all the time. So I am looking at CIG's plans of wanting to create some really in-depth medical gameplay that has all these types of roles you can have and stuff. But then I think, how much pushback is CIG scared of for making medical more deep? Because yeah, maybe you can like heal yourself up if you need to, but once you start getting into the injuries, the sicknesses, and all that kind of stuff, people are just like complaining that there's too much time that's put towards it. It's too much work, that kind of thing. I don't think the normal person should be doing all of that, but it seems like it would be so hard to balance it. And I feel like CIG would just rather make medical gameplay less deep so that they can not have to deal with that.
I think if they did that, the amount of vitriol would be insane.
So it's
Because they
vitriol either
sold
way.
chips. Yeah. Well, but that's the thing. People got upset about cargo because that's what we had for so long. It was always just push button instant, but they've adapted, and you can still like
Have they?
people. Yeah, I think some people probably got out of cargo hauling because they didn't want to move boxes, but I think there's going to be more that involves as cargo hauling evolves. I think there's going to be the options where you can just pay to unload and pay to load.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do that aspect of the gameplay. It's the same thing with engineering and the same thing as medical. If you don't want to do the gameplay, don't do it. Pay the game to do it for you. If all you really need is if you're playing solo, all you really need is med pens, in order to keep your health up. But once you get injuries, and this is the part of the issue as well, is we don't have the game support via NPCs to do these. Right now, if your ship needs repairs, take it to a station and you repair it. Eventually we're going to have more of that we can do ourselves. But if you don't want to do it, you just take it to a station and repair it. Anywhere you can land in a hangar, and they do it. You don't have to do it yourself. You don't have to do the maintenance. You don't have to engage in engineering. It's the same thing with medical. If you don't want to fix yourself on the fly out in the gameplay world, then take a few minutes and fly to a space station or a hospital and do it. And it's the exact same thing. People have these wild expectations that are out of alignment with the reality of what CIG has told us about it.
Man.
You don't have to use other players. It's almost like in real life where you don't have to be a doctor. You can go to a doctor, and the doctor doesn't have to be another player. It's an NPC.
That's the thing I think people are going to be complaining about. Is like when they get an injury and they realize they can't heal it on the spot, they have to go somewhere else to get it healed.
Mm-hmm.
But
it needs to scale. Obviously, you can't get a tier 1 right off the bat unless you get hit in the face with a railgun. It needs to be scalable, and I think the recipe that they've got where it escalates. You get a tier 3 injury, and then if you don't do something about it, it can escalate to tier 2, tier 1. It's one of those things where unless you're really bad or really careless, it's not going to be that punishing. But with great risk, it takes great reward. And if you go into a dungeon and you don't bring somebody who can treat your symptoms, because the way I explained it is in the Army, we have the Army Medical Center of Excellence. The motto is conserve fighting strength. And as the medic in your squad, in your team, all your job is to keep people alive and treat their symptoms. So even though they have a tier 3, tier 2 injury, they can still be effective. The symptom doesn't interrupt you from doing the game. But then the clock is ticking before you start to overdose, and you get multiple treatments, and you have to go back and get healed. But it's just like with your ship. You can do on a multi-crew ship, you can do spot maintenance, so that way, you can make it through the mission or make it through multiple missions before you finally go back to a space station and get it repaired. It just can't be so cumbersome that you can't get through a mission, or a couple of missions without having to go all the way back to a station and a landing center.
Yeah, I feel you there. I do think a lot of people who don't look forward to engineering are really missing out on the idea that it actually allows you to just repair yourself out on the field and not have to go back to a space station. I think that's going to be really nice.
Yeah, it's the same thing with medical. You plan ahead and you work with others. You're gonna feel the benefit of it, you don't have to take the time to go back to civilization.
Yeah.
That's all the difference is.
All right, final thing on the roadmap roundup that I think people were pretty interested in seeing was work on command modules. This is something that's been already known about and existed for the Caterpillar. It is a model that is supposed to, I think, run in the Spirit E1, and there are a couple other ships that this might work for. This might function with like something like the Endeavor, but the big test case, the big example everyone thinks this is being worked on for right now is the Ironclad.
Mhm.
How useful, how much gameplay do you think is really going to come from these command modules that are able to detach and attach to spaceships?
I think it just is going to give people flexibility. And I think the part that people are discounting is how easy it is going to be to go down into an atmosphere and land with your fully laden Caterpillar, your fully laden um, Ironclad with all that weight. And if you want to go do a mission or just go retrieve, some items or some people to move on with your game, just detach and you go. And think about how quickly you can get down to a location in your C8X, from orbit. It's just a couple of minutes at most, and you can run a little mission. You can do a little delivery. You can go retrieve something. You can go pick up some friends. A lot of really good options without having to take your Ironclad that has 1,000 SCU of something, fly it into the atmosphere in the new flight model, burn through all that fuel and however long it takes to do that. That's an important piece of flexibility. It also allows you to not just landing on a planet, but also going to a station. You don't have to go land in a hangar or dock. You can just land on a pad. It gives you a lot of options. You can disconnect from your ship and go to another person's ship with a hangar without having to go through docking or EVA. Um, and but I think that's the extent of it. I think though is not so much with the ships that we know about, but I don't think they're going to stop developing ships that use it. And I think that there will be other ships that will come down the line that use the tech that give you more options or better gameplay oriented options. One thing I thought about is if everybody here's a Star Wars fan, you remember the ring thing that the Jedi fighter could
In
dock
episode
with?
3.
Yeah, something along those lines in order to give fighters with small, or extra small quantum drives the ability to make larger, longer, faster jumps. Things like that. That would utilize that same tech.
That'd be cool.
And that's just we always talk about, oh well, you're gonna need your Liberator, to cross these larger systems, and it's like, well, if you've got maybe this thing that you could buy that allows you to dock with it with a myriad of different small ships. Maybe you don't have to upgrade to that bigger multi-crew ship that you don't necessarily want in order to traverse the star system to move into this next area of gameplay. Maybe you can do it and it's fuel efficient and and goes faster rather than having to make multiple jumps to refuel and let your quantum drive cool down and it takes forever. I think that would be a great option for people who are more single player focused, I guess.
So you're feeling it's going to pop up more in like the niche scenarios that we don't really experience at this point in the project, because like we're not at that game level where everyone's playing the game efficiently or how they need to. I sometimes think about this. Finding new ways to make it so that people don't have to go down into atmosphere or deal with that kind of flight and what difficulties might come with it is yet another point at which we're probably going to see a lot of people saying it's unnecessary, it's too much work, I should just be able to fly my ship down into the atmosphere. How do you think they're going to handle that from the game perspective? Like they can't just have a deb pop up. It can't be Clippy popping up on the side of your screen going, knock knock, hey, it looks like you're frustrated with something, let me help you out. Like they need to figure out how to properly teach people this and sort of ease them into it so it doesn't seem like this game is just constantly trying to make everything difficult, but it has a balance of choices and consequences and like forethought. How do you think they can go about that without just pissing people off all the time?
Well, this is one of those things where if people haven't been following the development and understanding that this is where it's going, it's going to be an adjustment period. And I think some people are just not going to like it. Could be like, I paid for this ship. Why can't I, go hover nose down in my Carrack on a planet? And
For
like,
all the dozens
I
of
was never,
Idrises they're selling.
yeah, that was never the intent. And I think part of that is the reason engineering and the flight model have taken so long is it's like one thing to get the tech to allow for it. It's another thing to build the gameplay and essentially the tutorializing and all the, they talked about in the recent monthly report, being able to show thruster heat. You have to be able to
That was
provide
so
that
nice to see.
feedback, yeah, in a way that is understandable and easily approachable. That you remember from what was it, the 2016? Was it Gamescom or CitizenCon demo with the, Chris having to tell you, and it popping up a message on screen with your constellation that hey, you can't fly through here.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
the Planet Tech demo.
hmm yeah, it's gonna be a challenge uh, to communicate to those people that hey, you can't easily do this in this ship, even though CIG has been telling everybody for years and years and years. People still buy their Idrises and their Krakens and want to solo them, and it's like, it's I'm sorry, you're gonna have to work your way around it. But I think that CIG is going to have to incrementally both add these things to the game, but also implement the aspects of it that are challenging, more punishing. The cost of fuel. You're going to burn a lot more fuel bringing your Idris down to land on the planet. Um, that can't happen all at the same time. You can't rip off all 10 band-aids. You can't wax the entire chest at the same time. You have to one strip. That's going to be the hard part.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I don't know how that's gonna work. I look forward to it. I am really excited for
Yeah.
spaceships to matter, the things that you are doing in the game to matter. But just going all the way back to really how we started this whole conversation, like there's a long time before that happens for a lot of people. It's just a lot of this stuff won't matter while there's still regular wipes, while persistence doesn't really work. There's no reputation. There's not a lot to actually pursue. Like there's more this year. It's getting better,
Mhm.
but if you're talking about a 1.0 release within 2 years from now, I think people would be expecting a lot more of the things that we're talking about right now to be in their forefront of thought, like the things that are literally going
Yeah.
on. It's one of the things people always used to say with Squadron 42 was like, if you want to know how close Squadron 42 is to releasing, just look at the performance of Star Citizen. And CIG's kind of proven that out over the last year in the way that they say like, okay, so we're doing all this stuff in Squadron and you guys are starting to see those things make it into Star Citizen, and like the AI that we've worked on is now being tested in the EPTU, and these are the things that are going on there. And it's like, okay, now we're seeing more advanced AI, we're seeing better performance, we're seeing these things that we can at least imagine, well, if Squadron 42 is a year ahead of this, then it is getting close to a release date. 2 years ago, or even a year ago, honestly, with the way that things were performing without server meshing, it was like easy to say, there's no way they're releasing anything. This performance is not great. But now that we're in this state where Squadron is putting out features that do seem to be performing better for Star Citizen, again, that's just talking about like the stuff in EPTU, the Vulcan, the graphic stuff, the AI. It is at least more believable. Um,
Mhm.
but that same thing is not true for Star Citizen 1.0.
No. Eventually, yes. In 2 to 3 years, mm-mm. I don't believe it. Not I mean, CIG proved me wrong, but I don't think that's reasonable expectations at
Yeah.
all.
And
I do think that it's just like 2018 was really rough, and or not, sorry, 2018 318 was really rough, and if you use that as like a baseline and compare each year after that, it's like, yeah, each year has had its own set of challenges, but the game has progressively gotten better. And like the road to 1.0, oh God, um, is going to have every year is going to have its own set of challenges. But when you think about the game, will get fuller, we'll have more features, we'll have a better, we'll be able to be. I always say I'm looking forward to playing Squadron 42 in Star Citizen because I'm looking forward to having a much more feature complete game. I'm looking forward to the full version of EVA with zero G push pull, because I love wreck diving. I'm looking forward to the atmospheric flight model because that's one of my big things. I love to fly in atmosphere. And I'm looking forward to hover mode V2. That's the big thing for a lot of the ships that I enjoy playing with. There's all these things that are part of Squadron that I've been looking forward to seeing in Star Citizen, and yeah, those are going to come in over the next few years, along with a few other big ticket features, and it will have challenges, but the game will be better because of it. Because we won't be dealing with the old star map. We'll have the new star map. We won't be dealing with the old inventory. We'll have the new one. We won't be dealing with the old EVA. We'll have the new one. It's
our
yeah.
our time will be spent less trying to get our stuff all equipped in your loadout because they have actual easy ways to save and equip your loadout, and more time spent picking missions and trying to figure out what reputation you want to do. Like a lot of the things that people complain about as being time wasters are time wasters because the features suck right now.
Yeah. We did I was on Paul's show a few months back and we talked about all the friction in game, different points of friction. And when you look at all the different friction items, it's because the game doesn't have the features that remove or mitigate a lot of that friction. And when you think about the game we'll be playing next year and the year after that and the year after that, as each one of these different friction points, get removed or mitigated, you get to that amount of, game is launched and you spend this much time getting set up to play and this much time over here getting to play, starts moving and getting more and more play time, less and less setup time.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
Let us know
Happens
in the
every year.
comments if you guys are still here, an hour into the show. Thank you so much for listening. When do you think that this game's gonna hit 1.0? I know we're all clustered around the same like 3 to 4 years. Chris obviously in the earlier area of that cluster, but I would love to hear what you guys think. Maybe a lot of folks are disagreeing with us as they listen to this, yelling at the screen that 2028 or even 2027 is a very real possibility. Love to hear the thinking behind that. Maybe it'll happen, dude. Maybe they take the heck off and we start seeing huge updates every quarter. I don't know. But I'd like to turn today's topic now towards another juggernaut on the scene, another big player in the space game genre who this week kind of flipped the space game genre on its head. I'm not going to say this is an alternative to Star Citizen now, but I am going to say a lot of people, even in the conversation we've been having here, a lot of people look at the things that we've been talking about and say that is too much. That is annoying gameplay. I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to get attacked by other people. I don't want to be always in PvP areas. I should just get to join my friends on a ship and go and play. And I do genuinely think a lot of those people are looking for what No Man's Sky has just become this week. Let's talk about this update and kind of what it's brought in and what it can offer Star Citizen players and maybe what it actually still can't. What do you get from this Voyagers update 6.0?
First of all, like you, I follow the space game scene religiously. And this came out of nowhere for me. I had no idea they were working on these things. Like it's not like so many other games where they show off little bits of development and say, hey, we're working on this. Like, wait.
Nope.
It wasn't on my radar at all. How'd you? Okay, cool.
They just free of charge, no freaking warning. They'll just drop the biggest updates out of nowhere. It's so crazy.
Yeah. And it's pretty incredible. And I applaud them because like I was there when No Man's Sky first released. I was one of the I bought it. I pre-ordered and everything. Yeah, the very beginning, and oh man, did it fall on its face. I played it and I was like, wait, this is it.
Yeah, I
But
remember looking
this
to get
isn't.
a refund like 30 minutes further in than the Steam refund. I think it's like a 2 hour period. I remember I was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, I don't think I want this anymore. I still remember where I was
Hmm.
sitting, and that was a completely different game.
Yeah. And I've picked it up probably for a dozen or 2 dozen hours every, it seems like every year uh, since release to try the latest update, and check things out. And I think because I'm spoiled by what Star Citizen is at least trying to do, it makes it hard for a lot of what they've done to stick with me for too long. And I think that's kind of probably going to be the issue for a lot of Star Citizen players. Um, just because we're used to one thing, and then it's like, okay, well, this is cool, but it doesn't hold my attention for that long. It's still, you want to try it, you want to play it, you have fun with it, you get the amount of hours that you would get out of a new released game, and then see, once you basically experience it all, then you're like, okay, well, all right, back to
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that, like, if you go, I watched your show, and I read all the same things and watched the same clips that you did, and looked at the patch notes. And I think the thing for me that is really great about this is this was feature work that they had to do in order to make these things happen. In order, it's tech and feature work to allow for it. The game that they had before wouldn't have been able to do this. And now that these things are in, they can make a lot more content for it and expand those features that I don't think people are thinking about. And that's what, it's like, okay, this will be cool for me for probably 10, 20, 30 hours, but it's what comes next that would probably be even more interesting for me. The being able to EVA. They didn't advertise any content with that. But now that you can EVA from your ship, they can make content for it, and it takes what was predominantly just a combat space out in the space, um, a little bit of exploration, but now it opens up a whole new aspect of the game and the game universe that was previously closed off.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
the
keep
we
going.
got
Yeah.
yeah the multi, having people on your ship and flying around while it does that. Not only is it predominantly right now, it's people can use the little crafting things on your ship and stuff. Um, you're still flying your ship, you're the one still manning the guns, but having people on your ship opens the door for them in the next update to do jump space like things that Star Citizen's been trying to do for years, with actual multi crew, not just
Yeah,
multiplayer.
dude. That's where I'm kind of like, we have access to the interior and exterior of the ship now.
Mm-hmm.
They could start to, like, a game. I'm very excited for a game like Jump Space, and I think it's going to have its spot
Oh
as
yeah,
like a more
September 19th, baby, can't
round
wait.
based, yeah, a more round based kind of roguelike situation. But this could be the space Sea of Thieves that people have want. I mean, if they add engineering, maintenance, ship repair kind of gameplay to No Man's Sky, and then you have the ability to take on those tasks while you're flying around, battling other people, possibly finding derelict ships in space. A lot of this is speculation and stuff, but that's the bread and butter, man. That's what we do with Star Citizen, and with No Man's Sky. More than any other studio, I think at this point, they have proven that when they unlock the ability to do something, they're going to take advantage of it. They're going to build the game further in that direction. I agree with you 100%, man. The stuff that they've put into this update is exciting on its own, but it's the potential of what it means for the future that's the real kicker.
Yeah, they are dipping their toes. See what I did there, in these features that yeah, they're just getting their foot in the
Excuse me.
door with EVA. They're just getting their foot in the door with not just multiplayer but multi-crew. Yeah, they've had multiplayer, but not on your ship like this.
Yeah.
Not with the ship moving around, not moving around to different missions and stuff. Um, yeah, I I got giddy just seeing the people, you're hovering in atmosphere and you get to jump off and free fall down. They've got a teleporter from your ship so you can hover and then beam me down, Scotty, beam me up.
Oh,
Like,
that's sick. See, and
yeah, it's super cool.
and that's why somebody already made the comment in one of my videos. No Man's Sky and Star Citizen are nothing alike. There's no reason to compare them because single player is stupid. Okay. Uh, I do
Just because they have a lot
believe,
of differences doesn't mean it's not fun.
yeah, I genuinely think that there are a lot of people who are looking for the experience that No Man's Sky is willing to offer. I genuinely think a lot of people are looking for Battlefield. Like, you can compare any game because there are people aren't single flavor humans.
I
It's a
mean, there
gross
probably are some
sentence.
humans that are like that, but
Yeah.
it's
There are some people like that, but people are looking for a combination of things, and not every game has to be the exact same way. I'm excited for Satisfactory for different reasons. I'm excited for Star Citizen, and I do think that what we're seeing from No Man's Sky, the direction it's been moving, especially lately, the graphical updates were great. A heftier focus on
yeah. Did you see all
exploration.
those? Like they put it at the bottom of the patch notes, but the DLSS and the all the different performance related things and rendering
Yeah,
related
yeah,
things, like they needed to do that in order to allow for these things to work.
exactly.
Uh, you know the but you know that's huge. You know those are big development steps, and with they basically kicked open multiple very big doors that were blockers to the next evolution of content for No Man's Sky. And
Right.
they're just walking through the door, and now it's like, okay, let's see where this goes. And it has the potential to offer a lot of things that people wanted from the game that it didn't offer uh, in the in the future. It's this first update with these things is good, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. If they don't capitalize it or don't have a plan to capitalize it on it, I think it would be a missed opportunity. But I don't not from Hello Games. I don't think that they're not going to
Nah, man.
vastly expand on this by
They do
any means.
freaking great work. And I
Mhm.
I think you're right. These are the kinds of things people are looking for. I I genuinely think they released the Worlds 1 and 2 updates, which kind of redid their planets and atmospheres, clouds, all that kind of stuff. I would not be surprised if Worlds 3 was giving them the ability to create multi-biome planets that have more vegetation, more trees and stuff like that, because they keep referencing Light No Fire as their sort of development playground where they're messing with their game engine and developing new features and mechanics and then bringing them over to No Man's Sky. And you know for a fact that they
Wait, they're doing what? Who-
what? Working on a second game and bringing the features back? Crazy. I wonder how are they getting stably added to No Man's Sky? I'm sorry. But yeah, they're doing this sort of track where they're very smartly experimenting with their features in the new game and then bringing them back to the old game. And the new game definitely needs biomes. It is a game that takes place across a whole planet. So they must be working on biome transitions, different types of biomes, vegetation, all that stuff. And I could see that coming to No Man's Sky. And honestly, you're talking about multi-biome planets, ship interiors, seamless travel and flight, narrative opportunities, NPCs, shipbuilding, cargo hauling, combat, exploration, salvage now is starting to come into the game. Like, this is a huge
EVA.
feature set. Yeah, EVA gameplay, huge feature set that really you can't get anywhere else on the entire gaming market except for Star Citizen and, like, to an extent, some things like Space Engineers and Empyrean, but those are different focuses in terms of their multiplayer aspects and in terms of their goals. The only difference here is the more MMO persistent universe nature of Star Citizen and, like, the depth of the gameplay that they're getting into. But
Made out of
this,
narrative. Yeah.
yeah, this seems like, I don't think this would kill Star Citizen at all. I don't think this is really going to have like a huge, if anything, this helps Star Citizen. Again, brings more people into the genre. But this does seem like the first real alternative people could at least look at to get a similar experience. What do you think?
hmm No, it's a good uh I think you're spot on in that it will get more people into playing the game because or people who didn't play the game because it didn't do certain things, and then like, oh, now it does this, oh, I'll give this a try, and then they'll play it for a while, probably have a lot of fun with it, do a lot of things, and then be like, you know what, I want more, or this is great, but what if it did this? I wish something else did this. Oh, have you played Star Citizen? Especially because in the not too distant future, a lot of the Star Citizen features will continue to get added and expanded upon, and we're going to have a more and more complete game that will offer a lot of these things that um, No Man's Sky is doing and is going to continue to do, but also offer things that it doesn't. I think the one of the big drawbacks for No Man's Sky is the arcade, flight models arcade. It is very, very arcade.
Yeah.
And that's fun for some people. It's not fun for me. I get bored with it really fast, which is part of the reason I play for a bit and then I get bored because it's I play Star Citizen. And I think that there is going to be a subset of people that will find the game fun for a while, but then find the game lacking, and then we'll move progress into Star Citizen, and they wouldn't have progressed into Star Citizen in years past because of the point of Star Citizen's development, where it was, what it was lacking, and the issues with it. And I think Star Citizen's image is improving slowly and is going to continue to pick up steam as it gets better and more feature complete. And I think it will be able to capitalize on some of that over time. So it's a good thing, and more options, more better.
Yeah.
Don't be a unigame player. That's not healthy.
Yeah, it's no kidding. Honestly, it's not. It's really bad for understanding what makes a good game. I keep thinking of No Man's Sky with this kind of update as becoming a somewhat of like a cozy Star Citizen, a little more constrained, more comfortable. They give you a PvP slider. Like they're willing to give you a much nicer environment to play a similar style of gameplay. I think that this does help Star Citizen in the sense that like you can tell people now Star Citizen is like a more expanded No Man's Sky. Not to say in terms of gameplay and stuff like that, guys, but the possibilities. Like you said, the flight model allows for a lot more different kinds of gameplay. The actual core mechanics are built a little bit more with group focus in mind, like they're more scalable, and the game overall feels more immersive. So it would kind of fit.
Do you want No Man's Sky, but in a more of a Expanse style IP, and that's more along the lines of Star Citizen?
Yeah,
the more hard sci-fi versus fantasy cartoony style.
Yeah, that kind of phrasing could actually help Star Citizen a lot more than I think one might initially think an update like this to No Man's Sky would. It's good marketing potential. So, do you think that this is a big hit to the rest of the genre? Do you think that other games and space companies or space games from now on are going to look at the kind of like having ship interiors is now a standard? You can't really fall short of this feature set because this is No Man's Sky is really mainstream.
Did you watch that Obsidian Ant video?
No, I did
Elite
not.
is missing the mark. He just did put out a video. Elite missing the mark on ship interiors, and I think it's you can't when people see that because like when Elite first came out and other games have come out and they're like ship interior is not important, seamless base to ground travel not important, and we've continually shown that games miss the mark when they don't do that, when they fake it, and at this point with technology, and engine development, you're just setting yourself up for failure if you don't do those things. It's like that was fine 20 years ago. It's not, even 10 years ago. It's not. It's not. We have the tools. We have the technology. You got to be able to use it and capitalize on
But
it.
I think,
especially because everybody wants to play together, and you can't really play together if you can't, get into your ship with your friends. Especially from an FPS standpoint or first person standpoint.
it definitely seems, though, from the fact that only Star Citizen and No Man's Sky really have pulled off this combination of things, again, not including the actual massive size of Star Citizen, but the features that they have, I think, are still proving to be pretty difficult, pretty elusive. I genuinely think Elite Dangerous probably really, FDev really wants to add ship interiors to their ships, and they just can't. It's just, it takes too much time and too much money and they don't have both. Luckily, both CIG and Hello Games have had both, but it's still like a rare combination. And I do wonder when the next time we're going to see another game reach this milestone will be.
Yeah, it's a massive physics challenge. Like they wrote that in the patch notes for this update for No Man's Sky. Yeah, there was a massive physics update to allow for this to work, and it's still a pretty simplified system compared to what CIG does. And it was a huge change to make it work in a multiplayer environment. And theirs isn't like Star Citizen. That's the challenge. And they didn't do it in 2016. They did it in 2025, 9 years later. And so, but they're showing that it can be done, and but you don't have to do it in an MMO environment like Star Citizen is, and it can still be fun and approachable.
That's a really good point. 3.0 came out with what, 25 player servers? Right? Wasn't the
25
cap
or
20?
50,
Was it 50?
something like that.
Maybe it
It
was
was low.
2.6 that was 25. But
Mhm.
3.0 would have been the first version to have landable planets and seamless travel. And it was about the same, because No Man's Sky right now, you're capped at about 32 people per star system.
Yep.
So that's kind of similar to what Star Citizen was doing back in 2017, 2018 when they released 3.0. And we're only seeing it now compound with things like meshing the servers together, bringing up the player caps, handling all these really quick physics updates. It does help to put a little bit more into perspective what Star Citizen is doing, that No Man's Sky makes it this far, and you still have to look back at all the other games that can't even make it to that point.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a very
And,
interesting topic.
yeah, and if you pigeonhole yourself by making these decisions early on, it makes it really hard to come back around and say, well, now we're going to do this. Like, how would Starfield, which is a single player game, like from their design choices, I don't think that they could ever come back around and say that we're going to do what No Man's Sky does with ship interiors as you're flying around,
Yeah,
and doing stuff. It's two different, the amount of work, I don't think that's something that's feasible. And for No Man or Elite to do it, to rework all their ships to then have interiors, it's like, nope, not going to happen.
yeah,
Not a snowball's chance in hell. And it's because they made those decisions early on, and for better or worse, CIG committed to one thing and has developed with that thing in mind from the very beginning. And well, yeah, you can see why it takes a long time, but it makes so that way you can do those things, in the long run. Like No Man's Sky is never going to be an MMO. They're never, like, the way their back end and their the works and stuff, and how their peer-to-peer connections go. There's no way it'll ever be MMO scale, because of that's the decisions that they've made, and they're limited by that. I don't think that they can get that way, but they are able to do these physics changes within the environment they've created to allow for a lot more that other games can't, even in a single player. Star Wars Outlaws, you know, fakes it all, was fun for a minute. The
At
narrative
least
was
they
interesting,
at
but
least they don't do loading screens, man. Or like at least they hide their
ooh,
loading screens.
yeah,
That's the
it's pretty
thing
cloud.
with Starfield. They genuinely had something good there. It's a space RPG. I don't think it should have been multiplayer, but the fact that now there is a multiplayer game that's kind of similar to it, that is also doing the shipbuilding, that will allow you to show your ships off to your friends in person, definitely diminishes the game. And I don't think Starfield 2 or whatever they go forward to do should be a multiplayer game, but I think they need to take into account how much this genre has moved forward and what you need to do to offer the proper experience. It's got to be immersive. You can't just ignore immersion
Yeah,
anymore. You can't drop loading screens in when you're going from a space station to a ship.
yeah. Hello Games did it. They're a tiny studio, you know, just tiny, and they did it. And meanwhile, Bethesda is like, no, we don't need to do that. We've got all these hundreds of people and hundreds of millions of dollars. That's not necessary. People don't need that in a game. Well, all right, the choice.
I am proud of this studio. I'm really excited. I'm really pumped that Hello Games has done what they've done with No Man's Sky. I think it's like a blessing to the industry. and it's just fun. Like you just love to cheer them on, you know? They're just out here developing and then randomly dropping a big update after Sean makes a couple waving emojis on Twitter. And it almost always hits off. It's always an impressive delivery.
What was the award, the big award that Larian got? I'm brain farting the name. Larian got this, the big developer award after.
Is it Labor of Love? That's what No Man's Sky should have.
Remember.
Comeback Kid, Labor of Love.
Yeah, yeah. They Hello Games needs to be celebrated and applauded in the same way that Larian has been applauded and celebrated for their development and their practice.
Agreed.
For doing right by gamers.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see where the space game, the whole genre, goes after this. I think this is a message to everybody else. I think other game studios are definitely going to take note of this going forward. Anybody who's making a space game, I mean, and this, like I said, this affects Jump Space. This affects Starfield. This affects Star Citizen to some extent. Not in that it like takes away from these games, but it definitely changes the way people consider these games when they look at them. And it ain't easy to do that. This was an impressive update. I'm looking forward to what they do with the future of this game. All that being said, just to wrap the whole talk up for today, anything finally that you are excited to see when it comes from, say, Star Citizen for the rest of this year?
I'm very eagerly anticipating seeing the results of the EPTU or tech preview and seeing where that goes. The rough launch, I think that was just floating it out there with the branch just to check out the build and be like, okay, yep, the build needs more before we start using that build for testing features. But the fact that they threw it out there with Vulcan stuff, I think is pleasantly unexpected. But I think over the next quarter or two, tech preview will be interesting to watch, and I think CitizenCon is probably going to give us some information and some stuff that's probably going to surprise us, even though it's shorter. And so, like, CAG likes to finish strong. And honestly, like, I'm just curious to see what they say about medical gameplay. The way they talked about it, I have concerns. It gives me some reservations because they were sort of cagey about it. So we'll see. Yeah,
we will see on that. Did you get to play in the EPTU test with Vulcan?
Nope, didn't.
No. Okay. All right. I was just wondering if you had any hands-on feelings about it. Do you think it's gonna raise the performance for people?
Hey, sorry, I hear kids screaming.
No problem.
1 second.
All right. The kids screaming is probably one of the best signs that a podcast is just about run its course, folks. I'm going to go ahead and when Tree does get back, we'll go ahead and do our outro here. But I think this was a good talk, a chance to double check in on Star Citizen, how it's going this year, what's kind of coming up in the immediate future. I enjoy looking at the roadmap features because the command module is one that I'm very curious how people are feeling about it. I hope you guys got some good information about Star Citizen, about No Man's Sky, about how No Man's Sky is affecting the game genre. And I want to be clear. No Man's Sky is not killing Star Citizen. Okay? Maybe that's on the thumbnail, maybe it's not. I don't really know. I haven't gotten that far yet. But it doesn't matter which genre these games belong to. When the mechanics and the feature set line up this closely, there is no doubt that there's crossover between the people who play them and are interested in them. And I think that a lot of people who have convinced themselves that Star Citizen is the number one game that they want to play might actually get a better experience from No Man's Sky just based off of what it wants to provide in terms of like PvP and danger and stuff. So I would definitely consider keeping it on your radar if that's something that you might be interested in. And I would always keep your mind open to space games. Space games are pretty cool. Ain't that right? Oh, you're muted still.
Gamescom has shown us that space games still aren't dead, even though like Starfield and Outlaws didn't really hit the mark. There's lots of space games out there, and it isn't just like flying ships and first person content. We've got Osiris Reborn, the Expanse game. We've got a Star Wars game, or Star Trek and a Battlestar Galactica game that are in the sort of tactical strategy roguelite environment that look really fun. No Man's Sky with a giant update that's probably paving the way for more. We continue to be in an ever better place, I think, for space games, and so I'm excited about it, and I'm excited that the background noise suppression filter that I installed worked, because you guys didn't hear the kids screaming, and I did. So.
Did not. No. Good job, tech.
All good.
But yeah, space games, sci-fi games, we're living much better this decade than last. Tree, if you could let the folks know where they can go to find your own content before we sign off, I'm sure they'd appreciate that.
Again, on Twitch and on YouTube, I'm just Tree0311. I'll be probably streaming again tonight, playing through the Onyx facilities, hopefully playing with some people in the community. And on Twitter, I'm Tree0311, either dash or underscore SC, putting out some posts and everything, just to getting people's views about things and sharing information. And my Discord is always open. Lots of very knowledgeable and pleasant people to talk about, not just Star Citizen, but all things space games and co-op games. And so there's a lot to talk about. So come on by, hang out. We'd love to hear from you. And I appreciate you having me on the show. It's always good to hear from you. And I almost always work Friday, so it was nice to be able to come hang out.
Yeah, glad to get you back on the show. Scheduling is tough now that we're back in this time zone. It will be a little bit easier, but glad you're able to jump on for this talk. Thank you so much for joining me. Folks, if you guys are watching on YouTube and you'd rather listen, I mean, you can always just listen to the background on YouTube, but if you are driving in your car at work or like at the gym or something, we are on audio platforms, Spotify, Apple, wherever you may get your audio goodness. Feel free to leave a review if you like the show. Feel free to leave a comment if you want to leave a comment and tell us how wrong we are. But ultimately, I just thank you for coming by and checking out the podcast. We will be back next week with some more talk, probably about Star Citizen, and I look forward to seeing your happy faces, or at least you seeing mine. Thanks again for joining me this week, guys. See you in the next one.